I'm looking.
They're in your box.
Oh, that's why I didn't grab it yet. I ended up signing checks.
Okay, I think, is that what you're doing, Vern?
Okay.
So-
Sorry, I missed it.
There's-
Oh, I see, okay. Okay,
Councillor Danaka.
I'll make that. I move the adoption of the agenda with the additions of 5B5, Northern Alberta Art Society, 5D1, letter of support to the medical clinic, 7.3, the High Parade Traditional Powwow, and I would also like to add the MD Golf Tournament under, I'm not sure what the MD Golf Tournament should go under. 7.4, upcoming meetings.
That one's not here, she's just adding it now. And I would like to add one other one, and that's the expense claim for myself on that trip to Edmonton. I'd like to just address that with myself. Finance?
Okay, we'll put that under finance. Now, do we have the background information for the golf decision and the expense claim? Are we okay without it being details?
I was going to include that in my report because council had asked me to find out where the funds were being donated to.
Right.
So we did.
It's supposed to be brought back to this meeting.
So
But it's going to be part of the agenda.
I didn't know it was supposed to be part of the agenda, but I put it in my report.
So maybe it was just a mix-up. It was your understanding that we were just going to be provided with information regarding the details of the golf tournament? Did we want to just leave that in the CAO's report?
I then leave it late for any discussion or action.
You can leave it in there.
Leave it in? You can just report on it when we...
get that.
Okay. So we're putting the golf tournament in where did you guys want it? 7.4. And 7.3, the powwow. And finance 2, expense claim. Any more additions to the agenda? Okay, all in favor of accepting the amended agenda? Carried. Do we have any public delegations? We have no scheduled delegations. George, you're not a public delegation, you're just a visitor?
No, I came because of this addendum that you have, Deb, the one on the letter from
The clinic?
medical clinic.
Okay.
I thought maybe you had some questions, since I've been part of the recruitment and retention committee for 30 years. I thought maybe there might be some questions that I could answer.
Where did we put that on the agenda? Do we want to just leave it and talk to it at 5B1? You're good to stay for a little bit so we can ask you
Yeah,
some
sure.
questions? Okay.
Yeah. Pittsburgh's leading 1-0 anyhow, so.
So Vern, you don't have a report? No. Okay, regular minutes of council. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from the 26th meeting? Councillor Danaka.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of the April 26, 2016 regular council meeting as presented.
All those in favor? Carried. Five B1, terms of reference Mackenzie Municipal Service Agency.
What about 5A, which is the tax levy?
5A.
the expense account. 'Cause you were
Sorry, I
already-
have 5B1 before it on my. Okay, sorry. We will do finance first. Pardon me? Do you want to leave it? Is she here? Okay. Sorry, is it confused you?
Tonight, 5 out of 6. Last night, 5 out of 6. Sunday, yeah. Unbelievable. I did win Friday.
Oh my goodness.
Good.
It's been a long day.
First time in about a month.
There's so many addendums because things come in later that we should look at. Cut off, like if there's a way to wait for the.
Doing a webinar right now and it doesn't get done till 8:15.
Yeah, sorry. Kinda got mixed up.
Because you wanted to postpone that
Yeah, I
for
did,
today.
yeah.
So why don't we just postpone that? We'll go right to the next item.
Bring it back.
And then when Terry has time, we can put that back on. Yeah. So, 5B2, expense claim.
I just, I was kind of surprised that this wasn't approved at the last meeting, and I guess I just wanted to explain what had happened and why. I had heard that part of the issue was it wasn't done or pre-approved before going, and that's why it wasn't approved. But I think those that were here, and I just wanted to make sure everybody understood the why it was done the way it was, is when the minister was down here and meeting with us, she at that meeting asked if somebody could attend. And, you don't say to the minister, well, we'll let you know in, 2 weeks or 3 weeks when we get a chance to see if it's approved. And she needed to know right then and there if somebody was going to go, because they only get 2 people. They have to go through a large process to get this approved. Like when that meeting was done, I went right over to her office to give my name so that they can put me on a list that is used, because they only get 2 people to invite. It's a process. I ended up getting contacted twice more by their people in the offices to go, is this right, and is this your right stuff? And when you go in there, there's a lot of security to get through, and they need your names on the list or you don't get in, and it's a big rigmarole for them. So once you commit to a minister that you're going to go there, and I think it's important that we build those relationships with the various ministers out there to say, no, we're not going to go, I think is, because we're not going to sponsor that, is not very forward thinking to say, you have to commit to when a minister's asking you and there's only 2 people that get to go, you want to be one of the ones there so you can, make those connections. And so that's why I did it. And of course you can, as part of our policies, can go in and like I'm doing now is say, I would like to recoup those after the fact, right? It wasn't pre-approved because you couldn't pre-approve when you had to approve it. So, and then I wasn't going to call her up and say, well, you know what, I'm not going because our council doesn't think it's very good. I think that would look horrible on our council to say that. So that's why it happened the way it did. And, I would like council to reconsider, accepting that claim because it was a day off of work and it was a lot of time and effort for me. But I'll leave that with you guys. Hopefully the extra explanation will make a difference, but I'll leave it with you to decide. Or if you have any questions.
when the opportunity arose for me to go, and it was brought forward to council, I had to volunteer because council wasn't going to approve it. So I went to the budget speech, time off work, and didn't get paid for it. I understand your position, and I don't disagree with you, but that was my circumstance. And there was no mileage, there was no hotels, nothing.
Why would council not approve?
I'm not sure, I don't necessarily recall why, but, pardon me? In order for me to go, I had to say, I won't charge the town. Because Quentin and Trevor and whomever, and council were not willing to pay. I didn't get paid. I volunteered to go because it was asked. But, and it's not sour grapes. I'm pretty tight that way. I don't charge a lot to the town, but by the same token, I understand the importance of being able to go there, and we should be able to go. But we also had problems in the past with people going to meetings and just billing and expecting to get paid for it, and that was an issue.
I agree with there's got to be a line where, but that's where, you know, it comes back for council's consideration on whether you're going to cover these expenses or not. And I don't remember that one coming either for your expense, because I would have supported it. I know that, because to me, that's, you do those sorts of things when you're dealing with, you know, an MLA and a minister. You want to make those connections.
Yep.
And that's something that we've got right in our business plan, that we should be dealing with and building these connections with.
Absolutely.
Governments, local, provincial, and federal, whenever we get a chance. And there was an opportunity to do it. So I think, you know, for a council not to do those, I think is not very forward thinking.
Councillor Danaka?
I just have a question. So when you went there, did you meet with ministers? Did you talk to them, or was it just a throne speech? You got showed around the legislature? I want to know what the benefit was of going.
Yes, to all of those things. Like, we did talk with them, and after the throne speech, there's a big gathering in the main hall there, and that's when you get to talk with the people, and you yeah, so you do get to talk with the MLAs and the ministers, and even in the crowd there was lots of VIPs, I'll say, that you're talking to. So yeah, there was lots of talking and networking there, but you know, would I say it was extremely valuable? I don't know. You know, when you look back on it now, I don't know. You know, like I didn't get any promises of $1 million coming to our town as a result of going there, but I don't think it hurt. I tried. So.
Councillor Gilroy?
I guess part of my problem of approving it actually had to do with timing. You just said that when you were asked, you committed. Between the time of this throne speech and the time you committed, there was at least one council meeting, and I'm surprised that either the mayor, who and you both together were there, not one of you had approached council to say, at least inform us that you were going. It was a surprise to suddenly find it, and you know, I guess I'm sort of a stickler for following the procedure that was laid out in the brief that we were given, that said that it needs to be approved and that no approval was given. I would have assumed that if you had already said yes, that it would have been brought to and say, we've been invited, and so at least giving us some heads up on it.
I can address those issues. Is number one is it was like once you say yes, I would not have wanted to go back and say, no, we're not going, because there wouldn't have been time for them at that point to get another person to go because of the rigmarole that's required to attend those meetings. So like I said, this is something that they took a month to, or at least 3 weeks to get organized and get your name on the list and everything. It was a way more of a process than I ever thought they'd have to go through. So yes, I didn't change, but our policy also states that you can go to a meeting without approval and then come and request reimbursement. So that's what I'm doing. I'm not breaking policy here. That's what I'm saying. It's still a policy that we're following.
I agree that we should definitely support the opportunity to go when asked, especially by our MLA, to attend. And I apologize that I know I spoke for Councillor Panasic last meeting, but I did forget that only 2 people were allowed to come, and I do remember now that you had to run right over to Danielle's office because it was a timely thing, because she had asked, I think, Mayor Cox wasn't able to go, and then Mayor Cox asked Brian, and so it wasn't very much time. And because you guys were saying, how come he didn't get it on the agenda? I know that the mayor had basically said, I can't go, I'm going to be away, can you go? And we definitely wanted to make sure that somebody was able to attend, and it was that timely issue that I forgot until Brian brought that up. Councillor Danaka?
Being that you have brought it up, but it's not, like, we don't have that information again. I think you've explained your reasonings. I think maybe it should be brought back to the next council meeting with all that information again, so we can have it in front of us again, as opposed to voting on it now.
Is it just because you want the amount of money?
I want to, yes, the claim amount. I can't remember what it was for and how you billed it out.
Mr. Martinson.
It was in the minutes of the last meeting. It was $628.06.
I knew it was 628, I remember that much. I dropped the 6 cents. I know, yay.
No, and it seems like a relatively small claim, actually, for having to take a day off of work, drive to Edmonton, drive back from Edmonton, just to represent, just to make sure that we're represented. And I think that it was an honor to be, for us to be asked. And I think that we actually do have a very good relationship with our MLA, and that we should continue to work with her, building this relationship. And decisions like this actually work against us in the long run here, guys, I think. Councillor Courtley.
Wasn't at that meeting, but my initial reaction is I'm a little embarrassed that we didn't pass it myself. We passed a lot of expenses on a lot less significance, and it's a little sad, and yours should have been picked up too back then, because those particular things is why we're here and why we're doing. We're trying to get those relationships with the provincial governments and open up those doors and work on certain things, and that's how you do that. And to not pass when a person takes a day off work, I'm sure he'd rather stay at work, right? So my initial reaction is I'm a little embarrassed that it wasn't paid for and that we have to talk about this again, and that we're gonna have to talk about it again. That's bad. So anyways, we got to do what we got to do, and we got to get it passed. So next step. That's my opinion.
So are we okay with voting on this now? Does anybody have anything more to say? Councillor Panasic.
We should have made a motion to start as I sit there and think about it now.
You didn't
We
make a
sort of
motion?
yeah, and nobody had made a motion, so maybe perhaps I can make a motion, if that's would work, that council approve the expenditure for Brian to go to the speech from the throne, the expenses to attend the speech from the throne.
Mr. Martinson?
I'm just not too sure whether you can make that,
Well, I don't have to vote.
that motion, yes.
Okay, I
'Cause
won't
it's
vote
monetary
because
gain.
there could be conflict of interest. I won't vote,
It's a
but
mon-
I think I can make a motion, can I not, for that? Yeah.
Was there any other councillors that wanted it brought back again with the information like Councillor Danaka? Are you satisfied with the information?
Satisfied it's in there.
Okay. Mr. Martinson?
I think that you were actually supposed to leave the council chambers for the discussion and the motion.
Oh.
So somebody else would have to make the motion.
I'll make the motion.
So same.
I'll leave it for a vote.
I don't know if he really has to, but I know we're sort of,
It's a conflict. I mean, yes, it's monetary interest.
but anytime we're approving,
Not a gain.
anytime we're approving the mayor or somebody to go to a meeting, it's a monetary.
Yeah, so I don't think when we've had issues in the past, how it comes all over this.
I definitely agree that he shouldn't be voting on it, because it's his, there's that conflict there. As to him leaving the room, whatever. It's done, let's just
Let's call it.
call the question.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That's fine. And Councillor Long, I recommend that you submit a claim on your previous. Are we at 5B? Yeah, terms of reference, Mackenzie Municipal Services, page 13. Do I have a motion? Councillor Danaka.
The council approved the Mackenzie Municipal Services Agency Board terms of reference.
Any comments, questions, concerns? Councillor Panasic.
I'm just wondering where these terms of reference come from, because on here it has the signature of the CAO and our mayor. Is this something that we created?
It is.
Can we create a terms of reference for another organization? They should have terms of reference for themselves.
Same as your.
Mr. Martinson.
That probably shouldn't have been there. I had contacted Mackenzie to form the terms of reference. They didn't have nothing. They just give us basically their mandate, so, of how their organization is formed, so.
Would be treated same as the airport committee, Brian, or Councillor Panasic, where we have to have a set of terms of reference before the committee can make terms of reference, right? You know how we went through it with the airport committee? So Brian created these terms of reference so that whoever sits on that committee can go there. If they want to change the terms of reference, then they can change them and bring it back for council's adoption. Because if we don't have a terms of reference, nobody should be going. That's why these were created.
Yeah, I agree it's a challenge because this isn't the only committee. Like, and often it's the new committees that we're forming that we don't have terms of reference for. And we have to create something just so there's a document on file to sort of follow protocol until the committee itself forms the terms of reference. But sometimes that's a year, 6 months after the group is meeting.
Yeah, because when you look at it, we can't dictate to that organization what they're gonna use for terms of reference. So these terms of reference may mean absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things, right? They don't have to adopt these in any way, shape, or form. This is it's an irrelevant document to that group.
But it gives us permission, as far as municipal affairs is concerned, to attend. Because if we're not supplying our own terms of reference, if we're not supplying anything, then we're in breach of
But
their
that-
directions.
Isn't that our own bylaw? It's not municipal affairs stating that.
My understanding was that when municipal affairs came in to sort of leave their direction, one of them was that we didn't have terms of reference on a number of committees, and that they recommended that we step down from those committees until we found acceptable terms of reference. So this may be just an interim way to get terms of reference in place. And maybe we should state them on those terms of reference, that these are interim terms of reference and until future ones are supplied by that committee. Councillor Gilroy?
In reference to this particular board, they do give us a manual with things that we have to agree to. A perpetual manual that stays as, regardless of who's in charge of it, it stays as a reference manual for the town that is updated each one. But from what I understand, from the way they run it, the main thing they want basically is that the town or the county or whoever is in charge of this from their different organizations, as long as they have an approved person. So the terms of reference really would guide more us. And then when whoever is on that committee, they are then under the control of that particular board and the terms of reference that they give in their manual. So this is basically just to help us decide who's going to sit there.
What you're saying, Councillor Gilroy, is that they have a terms of reference in this binder, that it dictates how this organization is going to function. So can we not get a copy of those terms of reference to use as opposed to creating our own?
Okay, what I would suggest then, for clarification purposes, is that I can bring the manual, the official manual, and give it to our CAO, and if you want him to redevelop these terms for more appropriate or more adequate representation, I can do that if you want.
Mr. Martinson?
I received the manual, that's where I created the terms of reference from. But Mackenzie themselves didn't have it. They've got a manual on how they operate with all this stuff listed within, but they don't have specific terms of reference. It goes on a much broader base, the manual that you're talking about, than this. So what I would suggest is, as Councillor Gilroy is our representative on the Mackenzie, that he takes these back to the next meeting. We'll forward them on to the Mackenzie for their questions and concerns about it, and we'll go from there.
So you're suggesting not to approve them tonight and to have them just submitted to Mackenzie
In
for their
principle,
approval?
in term, and then so he can keep going to the meetings, and then they'll drop proper terms of reference. Good.
Well, the next meeting's in August.
So should we maybe consider that suggestion of putting interim terms of reference when we're doing this with new committees, or until we've got something that, you know, which still allows us the opportunity to have the committee themselves look them over, and you're right, Brian, they should come from the committee. That should be the structure. But you know, I've actually found out, because I called a number of communities for tourism terms of reference and policies and procedures, just to sort of see what their tourism boards have. And a lot of them don't have terms of reference. Most of them actually function without. So it's a challenge. Like, this is what, like, the guidelines that we're under these very strict guidelines, more so than most other communities, it seems like. So they're sending representation to a tourism meeting without there being terms of reference. So I'm just saying. So it is a challenge, though. So to correct it, we have to maybe have something approved internally. Then we have to go to our boards and say, we need terms of reference. Are these acceptable? And have them adopt terms of reference and then bring them back to us. Like, it might be a 6-month procedure, depending on how often your groups meet and whether the person that's in charge is able to review them for you and approve them.
I believe the Mackenzie only meets quarterly.
That's what I said, August.
Does anybody have any other comments? Councillor Danaka?
Myself, I was under the same impression from the Johnson report that in order to be part of any committee, the town has to have its own terms of reference that allow an appointed member to sit on a committee. That's why these were drawn up, correct?
Exactly.
Yes. So I think we should just pass them as they are. That's the town's terms of reference, so the town can have somebody on that committee.
Yes.
Councillor Long?
I'll just reiterate what Councillor Danaka said. These terms of reference are for us. When we go there, they know this is what we're here for. This is who's representing. Here's our rights as such. Not like the issues that we had recently with the rec board, for example. And so this is for us to say, this is how we're going to conduct ourselves. This is how we're framing our reference when we approach this committee. That's all it's for. And so it should be able to be passed and accepted. This is for us, not necessarily for Mackenzie. But it helps Mackenzie understand why we're there and how we're going to conduct ourselves according to our terms of reference. And that's the number one word, ours.
That's an interesting spin on it, because I didn't really look at that direction from the minister that was what the terms of reference were about. So we actually probably for a council should clarify that. We should go back to that report. We should find out, maybe that's something that administration wouldn't mind looking into, so we can actually know why we're supposed to supply. I mean, I think I agree. We can maybe look at approving these, but going forward, because then we should be having our terms of reference for every committee, and we shouldn't be just getting the airport's terms of reference, maybe.
We did add it was which one did we do? Was it at the airport? Yes, we said our terms of reference for the airport, right?
So it's in absence of theirs, then we submit as long as we have a copy of our terms of reference. Is that your understanding?
Just to clarify, though, that the airport committee did come up with their own terms of reference, which made the towns irrelevant, right? And so those ones became irrelevant once that group developed their own, and we did that on an interim basis. Because the MD had terms of reference, we had terms of reference, and they weren't the same. And so we could have, there's Mackenzie, they might be 13 different municipalities on it, and they could all have different terms of reference. Which ones is it for that organization? You need one set for an organization.
Did you have something more, Mr. Martinson?
With the airport committee, when I received the terms of reference from the county, it had no mention of the town of High Prairie.
That's right.
So I don't know if they had approved that as their terms of reference, as Councillor Danaka and Long had stated. So what I did is I recreated the terms of reference to reflect both the county and the town as the two representatives. So. Councillor
Gilroy?
Just having been there for the meeting and seeing how it's run, I'm looking at this and I'm just wondering, because we don't have any control really of that committee. Unlike the rec board, we have some control, and the airport, we have some control. I see this as basically defining who will represent our town, whoever that would be, and what responsibilities they have toward our town. Because, as I said, with their manual, they do have things that will tell you what they expect. They'll define, for example, what they expect of a chairperson and things like that. They'll have theirs. But I think it's more important right now for our terms of reference to be able to say, this is the kind of person we're going to have, and this is what our town expects from representation.
Mr. Walker.
With all due respect to all of council, if we don't have a terms of reference set up by this council, no councillor can attend any committee meeting under the Johnsard report. So this is an interim until Mackenzie County develops a terms of reference, which needs to be brought back to this council for approval.
Any more questions? Comments? Councillor Panasic.
I don't think that we would approve the terms of reference of another organization. They've approved it, and we either decide based on that whether we want to be a part of that organization or not. We don't dictate to Mackenzie Services what their terms of reference are. That's my take on it.
That's not what I'm saying, Councillor Panasic. What I'm saying is we have to have a terms of reference to send somebody to that meeting. If Mackenzie County goes there and then the committee develops a terms of reference, then that councillor brings it back to this council to approve. And then you operate under their terms of reference. Yeah.
Are we good? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well, that was easy. This is gonna be a quick agenda, Nancy. 5B2, Chamber of Commerce Board. Do we have a motion? Councillor Gilroy.
I make the motion that council approve the Chamber of Commerce terms of reference and that council approve the appointment of Councillor Rose to continue as a member and Councillor Long to be the alternate member of the High Prairie Chamber of Commerce Board until the next organization meeting in October 2016.
Comments? Questions? Councillor Panasic.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks. I got lots of questions again. Just the meetings were probably pretty fast when I wasn't here, I take it.
9:30 we're done.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah.
8:30, wasn't it?
Yeah, 8:30, yeah.
We're watching.
Yeah. Well, I just noticed that on this terms of reference, at the title, there's nothing there that says what board this is for. Is this part of a bigger document and it's just been taken out? It just says Board of Directors terms of reference instead of, for the chamber, but it also just says Board of Directors terms of reference. So maybe it's part of a larger terms of reference?
Maybe. I just forwarded it on to Brian because I know that they had made changes, and I just forwarded it on. I didn't look. Maybe it was just absent the name Chamber of Commerce Board of Directors terms of reference.
On her behalf, it does say page.
Councillor Long.
What's your concern, Councillor Panasic, insofar as this is not?
Well, when I looked at it, I didn't see that it didn't identify the group in the heading. Like it just says Board of Directors terms of reference. It doesn't identify that this is for the High Prairie Airport Committee. If you read in, you can sort of determine it's probably that one, but it would be nice if there was a title on it. Other than that, I don't have a major concern.
Yeah, it references chamber throughout, but you're right. It should. I mean, we could probably approve it amended and give it a title, so Councillor Panasic can be happy. Councillor Kilroy.
Even though I brought it up, I did have a question on 212. It says, well, a director may be fulfilling the requirements in the bylaws to have presentation from each of the communities in the area. I thought this was for our Chamber of Commerce for High Prairie. Is it going beyond that?
It's a High Prairie Area Chamber of Commerce.
Okay.
But most of the business community is in High Prairie, so.
Thank you. That's
That area. Councillor Long.
And you'll find from time to time, we don't have a constituency base. So we don't have a ward system. So we represent every single person in this town. We all know that. And our first and foremost role is to make sure that we deal and represent the town over and above everybody else. Whereas here, that puts us at a conflict because it tells us that we represent the whole region, not just the town or not just that business. So underlying that, yes, we represent, if we sit on this board and we're dealing with the issues of the whole, from big lakes and et cetera, but we represent the town first. And we should
And we represent the town of High Prairie on this board.
Yes.
Right, it's just a position on the board.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that we represent all the areas. If they choose to have a member of the county that represents different areas, then that will be their decision, right? Any other questions? All those in favor? Carried. Seniors Week, 5B3. Do I have a motion? Councillor Danaka.
Oh, okay. Council received the request to provide the Recreation Board $1,600 to host the 2016 Seniors Week barbecue for information.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor
I agree with Councillor Danaka only because back on March 8th, we actually had a motion to grant money for the Seniors Week to FCSS for $1,000, $500 for volunteer, $500 for the Seniors Week itself. And I guess looking at that and looking at the expenditures, two major expenditures, one in Councillor Rose's report and the other, the ice rink, I think that I would be more comfortable with the rec board finding the money somewhere themselves as opposed to us giving them money at this point.
Does anybody have some history? Mr. Martinson, do you want to speak to what this barbecue, like, is this a historical Seniors Week event, right?
It is an annual event, and the rec board hosted it last year. And in talking with Lori Matthews, the interim rec director, she said that they have no funds this year to host this event in JC Park. They did the barbecue, they did some bocce ball down there, and whatever other games for the seniors.
Councillor Long. Okay.
We have been told in a letter from the government in our package, we have been told throughout from this community, we've got to get our spending under control, we've got to get our taxes under control, we've got to get everything under control. And unfortunately, wonderful events like this, if we don't have the money, it's a sign of the economic times. And if the rec board doesn't have the money, we certainly don't have the money, then somebody should be going to the county because they have the money. And apparently, never mind. So the county should be the one that they should be going to. We can't afford it, period.
Councillor Danaka? Okay. FCSS does put on 3 luncheons. This is Seniors Week. It's originally, I think the sort of the kickoff is the Seniors Tea that's hosted at the library. And then there's 3 days after that the FCSS department looks after, of which is mostly funded by the county. So there's a soup and biscuit and a bingo, and then there is a Triangle Hall the county seniors luncheon, and there's one more event, and I can't remember for sure. Did he know?
Yeah. Wellness fair.
The wellness
on
fair.
Monday.
That's right. So there's 3 events that the county more or less is hosting, paying for. This is the only one that that's in town for town seniors. So it will be disappointing probably to our residents if that's the only one out of the sort of the normal events that are handled throughout that week that isn't put on. Councillor Panasic?
There's, every year I know that there's a big luncheon hosted at Pleasant View Lodge, because I know I've been there flipping burgers before. So I'm not sure if it's this one in June. What's that?
Pleasant View is Thursday, I think.
Is that part of this week?
Pleasant View is Seniors Week.
Yeah, that's the one I was referring to. So I think that, there is an event that goes on in town for them was what I was getting
And is
at.
that open for all the residents or just those of Pleasant View Lodge?
It's open to all seniors, and in fact, I know they've even bused seniors in from Slave Lake and Canuso that come in for that.
Any other comments? Councillor Gilroy?
Just a quick question. If, perchance, the rec board goes over their budget perchance, do we end up through the intermunicipal having to cover half of it? And if so, would that mean that we would have the possibility of paying for this twice? In theory? Because right now, the motion here also talks about the fact that, if I remember it correctly, says we are then to direct council is supposed to direct administration to contact Big Lake County to see if they'd be interested. So this would strictly be on us, but if they're overage, it just seems almost like we'd be almost paying for it twice. I mean, I love the seniors, and I love doing all these things, but when I look at also the amounts that are being spent in Rec Board too, those two major purchases, and I'm not sure where the money came from for those, that's over $250,000, I think, if you look at your report.
Yeah, and some of those were costs that they've been putting money aside for. I mean, and that's just the cost of living and the cost of maintaining. I mean, you own a house and you need to repair your roof, and guess what? You still need to eat hamburgers once in a while too. So, I mean, it's one has nothing really to do with the other. It's just the reality of recreational services that need upgraded changes or things that sort of creep up in the recreation budget. And it's sort of like Public Works, everything that happens is expensive, right? But yeah, it's just whether or not we feel that this is an event that we can financially afford to support or not. I think that the county's already doing quite a bit. I don't know that we should really go back to the county and ask. If Recreation feels that if this council doesn't want to approve it, and if Recreation feels that they can somehow fit it into the budget, then it is a shared event, right? Because then it's coming out of Recreation budget, which is 50% county, 50% town. But it is for the town residents, and that's why the request is coming to us, because it's an event hosted in town and that there are events that are hosted in the county or that the county's already putting funds up for. Councillor Long, sorry.
Can we afford it?
We can afford very little.
Very little. And every week, when we sit down, there's always somebody else asking for more. And we don't have more. And if anybody can understand the fiscal constraints that we're facing now, it's the seniors in our community that have been through these ups and downs, ups and downs, ups and downs. They get it, they understand. And we can keep on passing money out all the time because it's only $500 here, $600 there. Before you know it, you don't have enough for hamburgers. So we can't afford it, in my opinion. That's all. I'm not going to say anymore.
Okay, you guys ready to vote? The motion is to accept it for information. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. 5B4, memorial tribute. Do I have a, oh? What? Oh, jeez. You're hurting my head.
Wow.
Do we have a motion? I will make a motion. That council approve the purchasing of a frame memorial tribute in memory of Councillor Emter. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I'm sorry, I just want to explain why I voted the way I did. I forgot to ask just one question on it. That's why I voted no. And that was, with this particular item, will it be specifically for, if it happens again, to only councillors that pass away during their term as opposed to a councillor or someone
And
else.
like you said, you didn't get a chance to ask that question, and that should be something that can be addressed, and maybe there should be a policy on it, but that's why this was at council to approve the way it was.
And that's,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
No more flags. Okay, we have 5B5, right? Northern Alberta Powwow. No? Northern Alberta Arts and Entertainment, is that what we're at?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Do I have a motion? Councillor Worley.
The council receives a request for sponsorship in the amount of $750 from the Northern Alberta Arts and Entertainment Festival Board for information.
Any comments, questions? Brian, did this just come to us over email, or where did the request come in?
It came an email.
Is there two motions here? Wasn't there one that they have invited them, someone to speak, or the mayor? Oh, it's powwow. Two different events.
Different events.
Oh, okay.
Two completely different events.
Sorry.
Debbie? That's why I put it to information, because it's another event.
Yeah.
That's
I
why.
see. Okay. Unfortunately, I think that this is a fabulous event for the area, and a great opportunity to showcase Hyperion. It's bringing people in from all over the area. I hear you, your concerns, your financial concerns, but you know what I'm kind of concerned about is that we have to actually create a community here that people want to live in. And if we cut back to the point where we don't do anything, we say no to everything, you know, we're creating an environment that people will maybe not really want to call home either. So there is a concern. I mean, I'm not saying that specifically for this event, but when we say, oh, no barbecues, and the county does a barbecue, and no this, and then the county does that, I know from the perspective of owning a real estate company or being involved in a real estate company that people actually come into the office and say, well, we actually are just going to move to the county. We're going to sell our house in town, we're going to move to the county. Sometimes that's because of taxes, but you know, maybe there's eventually going to be because we can't, we're never stepping up and saying we have to do something for our residents, because we'll also see that the county will put on a barbecue in the next little while in June just for all county residents at the county office, and we don't do that for town residents, right? And we hear that over and over again. So I know I'm sort of rambling about not this topic, but sometimes we have to spend money to make our community good. Councillor Long.
I agree, and I've stated over and over again that that's the beauty of civic politics, is that we actually have a relationship with the people that we're representing and working for, and that hopefully we are in touch and have a little more empathy when we're dealing with issues like this. But unfortunately, thanks to a whole pile of different issues, some from our province, we're getting hit again, and we're finding that we owe more money, and we're not going to have as much revenue streams coming in, and it's not going to get easier, it's going to get tougher. And so if we continue to keep on spending and not looking at the issues of taxation and mill rates, but we'll just keep spending because we want people to stay and have fun here, they're not going to like us if their taxes go up either. And so better to pare back now and then show them that we're trying to work within our means.
I hear you, and I'm just saying
I know.
that ultimately sometimes spending money on your community is an investment in the community.
I agree.
And that it will come back to us in a different form that could actually be monetary, right? When you bring people into your community and they feel welcomed and they feel attached to the community, and then they say, hey, I'm gonna set up business here, I'm gonna move to this area. It's very welcoming. How else we can keep on saying we've got to cut back, we've got to cut back, we've got to cut back, but how are we going to attract people? How are we going to attract business if all we're going to do is get us down to this bare bones skeleton of a community that isn't that inviting and welcoming? Councillor Danaka.
Again, back to our issue about grants and sponsorship. for our $750, we get 10 stage front seats, flag presentation, and advertising. So, is there anything, as opposed to appearing not to support them by not giving them any money, is there in-kind stuff that we can do? So, because I don't think we really need 10 stage front seats.
Councillor Gilroy.
At the risk of sounding silly, I see that we're dealing with Northern Alberta Arts and Entertainment Society and the High Prairie Traditional Powwow. My question really is, how different are they? And secondly, I've noticed on their, by the arts and entertainment, how wide a cultural heritage are they actually dealing with is what I'd like to know. Because if if it's Ukrainian and everything else, then it really encompasses the whole community. But if it's going to be focused mainly on First Nation and Métis, I'm sorry, the powwow seems to be almost similar.
If you look at the little picture, there's Ukrainian dancers in it, and there's cowboys, and there's, it's sort of, Métis, and so it is culturally diverse.
So we're dealing with two different things. I'm saying, to me, they're a little bit similar here, and so we have to be careful.
Completely different.
A powwow is not the Northern Alberta Arts. A powwow is far more a cultural event that is specifically for First Nations and Aboriginal people. There's no, I see no comparisons, no confusion. Two different animals.
I was looking at the list of sponsorship available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who sponsors and what the event is are two different things.
Okay. Everybody have some? Councillor Courtly.
Maybe in lieu of money, we can offer a reduced rate on the arena, because apparently it's at the arena for 2 days. We could maybe, instead of giving cash, we have facilities, right? We can give them a cut rate on the, because they're going to have it whether we give them $750 or not. And they're renting our arena and our facilities, right? So we could look at maybe giving them in kind, like Donna was saying, an in kind, maybe a cut rate on the rental.
Except for this board can't do anything with the rec, you guys can, right? Rec board can.
Yeah, probably, I guess that's.
That was in our decision, right?
No, true, but.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what we've sort of done in the past, is talked about using in-kind, right?
That's right.
Using our electronic sign to help
Absolutely.
promote their events.
For sure.
And we can encourage staff and council to attend events and purchase tickets, and we can support it in lots of different ways. I just say we've
Absolutely.
got to be careful about always saying no and saying
No,
we can't afford anything and we're going to strip down High Prairie Teal.
Yeah.
That there's nothing that we can contribute to and offer our residents, right? But I mean, this is an event that's happening with or without us, and they're asking for sponsorship. So maybe what we can do is, because we've talked before about the town not really taking a sponsorship role in things, because we don't really need the advertising. We're not looking for this as an advertising source, and that maybe there is some in-kind opportunities, and maybe we can get our administration to go back and see what they can offer them that way.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments? You're biting your tongue. Okay. So the motion is to receive it for information.
Would we then make another motion afterwards to send it back to
Yes.
Sue?
All right. So that's what we can do. Okay. All those in favor? Does somebody have another motion? Councillor Danaka.
I make a motion that administration contact the organizers of the Northern Alberta Arts and Entertainment Society to see what the town of High Prairie can offer them in-kind donations to support their upcoming event.
Anybody have any questions? Councillor Gilroy.
when, I'm just thinking about what Arlen had said just a few minutes ago. Would we then have to make another direction to see if there was an option with Rec Board involved with this? Do we need to make some sort of direction to Rec Board as well?
I'm just, you have no say over the record.
No, but ask them, or does he just break something up? I'm just, 'cause it was.
Well, it's certainly his prerogative as a board member to bring that up at a, he can by himself. I mean, we can make a motion to ask him to do that, but I mean, that would be.
I'm just trying to make sure that what he said is used, which I think is a very important thought.
Councillor Long, are you just, yeah, okay, good.
Everybody knows how I feel about
Okay.
Rec Board.
Okay, let's vote. All those in favor? We good with the motion, I hope. Okay, carried. 5D. High Prairie Medical Clinic. Councillor Danaka.
I make a motion that council provide a letter of support to the High Prairie Medical Clinic in their efforts to recruit/sponsor a doctor.
Mr. Key, would you like to come up and chat with us for a few minutes?
Well, if anyone has any questions,
Just about
fire
recruitment.
away. I can maybe elaborate a little bit on it, Gary. The last doctor that was here, I toured him around, and I thought, boy, we've got a winner this time. Because his wife told him when he left South Africa that we are not moving to a big city, we are moving to a small town. And I thought, boy, now we've got a winner. We finally got somebody that's actually going to stay here for a while. I went to visit him the night before he left, and he was quite enthusiastic. He said, I'll see you in August. Well, that hasn't happened. Alberta Health Services, it's my understanding anyhow, Alberta Health Services said you have enough doctors in High Prairie. And from my perspective, when you have to wait 3 weeks or a month to see your family doctor, that's totally unacceptable. That is not acceptable. That's a crock of fertilizer. So, about 3 weeks before that, I toured a doctor around that was recruited by Health Services, and he was coming here too, but I don't know that he's going to be allowed to come here neither. Health Services said 1,000 patients is a normal workload for a doctor. Our catchment area is 12 to 15,000 people. So we should have 12 doctors in High Prairie. So I think that it's really important that every municipality, every settlement, every reserve get on board and support this thing. Now, like I said, the last doctor I toured around that was going to come here, in my conversations with him, he said that 3 of his colleagues from South Africa were quite keen on coming to Canada. And he said, I would really recommend High Prairie. He said, you people have treated me so well. And one of his colleagues is a surgeon. And I thought, holy smokes, we've hit the jackpot here. You know? Wow, this is looking better all the time. And then the bureaucracy in Edmonton says, no, this is not going to happen.
And is each time just because they're as each one of the doctors you're talking about coming to Dr. Edwards and Dr. Laughlin's clinic? Is that why they've been stopped?
Well, I don't know that. There's a lot of political garbage going on there. But
So the doctors that you've toured around, George, are they for, like, you don't know which clinic, you're just touring them around for Alberta Health Services?
that's right. The last one was, as I understand it, the High Prairie Medical Clinic paid his expenses to come here. The provincial government didn't even pay his expenses. They recruited him from South Africa. They paid for him to come here, and he said he was going to come here, and then he was turned down. I think that that's just awful. I really do. So, I don't know what else to do. I've hit the wall with this whole thing.
So you're saying with physician recruitment that they're not really recruiting to High Prairie at all right now?
I believe the only one that they're recruiting or looking to recruit now is an anesthesiast, a GP anesthesiast. That would be wonderful, but they're kind of like chicken's teeth. So, I think that we have to support this thing, I really do. So, that's what I came tonight was to, if anybody has any other questions, just fire away and I'll see if I can answer them for you.
Councillor Long.
I don't necessarily have a question, but every time I see Dr. Worry's name on a piece of paper, I start to worry. He just muddles things up as far as I'm concerned, and he's been more of a detriment in allowing us to move forward than he has anything else. So, yeah, it's just every time something positive comes around, it gets denied, and when you look at the paperwork, Dr. Worry's name's there, and it just, I wish he would just go away, but say that
You're right, Michael. He is the chief, the head honcho in terms of recruitment.
Yeah.
For this northern zone. But this is a private business. The High Prairie Medical Clinic is a private business. And they want to hire somebody to come to work for them. I think it's totally wrong that the government has any say in it at all. If they want to hire 10 doctors and they're willing to come and work in High Prairie for the wages that clinic is willing to pay them, what the hell is the government doing sticking their nose in there? This is a private business.
Councillor Panasic.
Yeah, I totally agree. We have to support this, and beyond just a letter of support, I think we need to set up a meeting with the doctors and with them and get them all in a room to have this discussion, because when we've had discussions with Dr. Worry and AHS, they seem to have good explanations. So when I hear them, I go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. But when you get, like we just did in the last week, the other side of the story, you go, well, this is all, a pile of fertilizer, as you say. So I'm sitting here going, I'd love to get these two in a room and with us and say, come on, let's get to the facts here and cut this out. So I'd like to write a letter of support, and I would like to try and set up a meeting between those two and with us there to support them and get to the bottom of why they're saying no to our business where they don't have any right to. And we do need more doctors. You're absolutely right.
Councillor Danaka.
I was just going to reiterate what Councillor Panasic said. I think this is something that we definitely need to get behind, because we seem to be getting, Alberta Health Services version, and then we're getting what we just received in the last week or so. So somewhere somebody's not being as truthful as they should, and I think we need to find out what that is, or what the issues are, and really support that clinic.
No, for sure, I agree. And I agree with you that we've sat down with Kevin Worry and Richard Ibeck, and we've heard their side of things, and you're right, we do get convinced that their story is legit, that there's some merit to their calculations. But 1,000 patients per doctor, when you look at our area, and I talked to Judy about the patient load that they have at the clinic. Lachlan has 3,000 patients and Edwards has 2,500. Yeah. And we both know, or we all know, that those doctors are looking at future retirement. And if they're not able to bring staff in, we're going to have one clinic, and we're going to have a small staff with one clinic eventually. Councillor Courtney.
I'm not really clear on the whole. I know the background, I know everything else, but doesn't Alberta Health Services see and regulate the amount of people that Dr. Lachlan and Edwards handle, don't they have the numbers and do they not see the volume?
Yeah, I do believe they have the numbers, Harlan.
Oh.
But I attended a meeting, I guess it's probably 4 or 5 months ago, and Mr. Albach was there.
Yeah.
They were talking about the associate clinic and the way they were gonna run it. At that time, they said that they were going to pay the doctors a salary. They would see a minimum of 4 patients an hour, 7.5 hours a day. And I asked the question, where the hell are you gonna get all the doctors from? And they said, what do you mean? I said, well, simple arithmetic tells me that what you're saying is the doctor's gonna see 30 patients a day. The doctors in High Prairie are seeing 50 to 60 patients a day. They're not working a 7.5 hour day, they're working 10 and 12 hour days. But that's the number of patients that they're seeing. So you're gonna have to have 75% more doctors. And they said, no, that's not true. Well, simple arithmetic tells me it is. I'm not a genius, but simple arithmetic tells me you guys are out in left field.
Roy?
I think this has all the earmarks of, we need to really look at the idea of fairness. Are both clinics being treated fairly? And if there aren't enough doctors, obviously what's going to happen, and we don't like to say it, they go elsewhere. They go to McLennan, they go to Slave Lake, wherever they can get a doctor. And by doing that, that actually does not do well for our new hospital, that does not do well for our local economy, our community. And so I think we need to, when we word these kind of letters, we need to really emphasize the fact that whether it's for the AHS or Dr. Laughlin's clinic, the bottom line here is we need fairness. A level playing field where where all doctors are treated equally as long as they're qualified to be here.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that that's really all they're looking for. I mean, they have been hoping for space in the hospital, and they've come up with alternatives, and I'm sure they would still appreciate space in the hospital. But I think that they've got an agreement struck for a professional building, and they're relocating. But they need some access to hire staff, and if they've got people that want to come to our community, they should have some say in who comes to the community. And I do know that what we'll find out is as we dig that Alberta Health Services somehow has a stranglehold on doctors from outside the country. That the clinics here locally are allowed to hire anybody from within Canada, but anybody outside the country seems to have to be approved by Alberta Health Services. And they say that it's the cost of the recruitment, but George, you said that in this case that they recruited this one, the medical clinic recruited this one themselves, and they're still holding it.
Yeah, that's my understanding.
But I mean, ultimately, the cost of recruitment can even be paid back. You know, so I'm confused as to why they're able to control that. But go ahead.
You tweaked on what was one of my next questions was is there learning about this Alberta Health Services, is it the conflict with the bringing them from out of country, or is it can Robin or Dr. Lachlan hire somebody from Calgary or Lethbridge or another doctor in Western Canada or multiple doctors? Is there a restriction on just the out of country people? Is that where the battle is, or is it a doctor in general, no matter where he is from?
No, I don't think they have any say if it's a Canadian doctor.
Yeah.
But I can carry this a little further into a different kind of vein for you. I have been lobbying heck out of government for at least 10 years to put more money into education to solve the medical problems.
I know where you're going with this.
And those brilliant people in Edmonton just can't understand what I'm talking about. I said, foreign students come here, they take up the spaces in the university. The university has to allow them because they need the money to keep the door open. We all know that the foreign students pay a heck of a lot more tuition than the homegrown kids. We as taxpayers are big time losers because when those students are trained, they go home. They don't stay here. They go home.
And the spaces that allocate for medical anyway are so small. The number's so small.
Oh, I know.
And like, there's no Canadians that are local students that get accepted, whether it be pharmacy or almost any of the disciplines. So you're right, that's a challenge. And yeah, growing our own is the best answer, but Department of Education won't allow us to do that, right?
Well, this is part of the problem. And I have been lobbying the government to have training for doctors in Grand Prairie because stats show that 70% of students will stay within 50 to 60 kilometers of where they went to school. And you stop and think about it, it makes sense, okay? They're 18, 19 years old when they go there. They go to school for 6 or 7 years. They meet some good-looking girl or some good-looking guy. They get married. Oh, heck, we're not moving. We're staying here. Bring them to Grand Prairie and train them. What's wrong with that idea? They're going to stay in the peace country.
Councillor Danaka?
I think we all agree that this is something that we need to support, whatever the issues are between them and them, but it's something that we need to support, and I think we should just vote on the question.
Yeah.
Any other? Want to read the motion back?
That council provide a letter of support to the High Prairie Medical Clinic in their efforts to recruit and sponsor a doctor.
All those in favor? Carried. We should make sure, Councillor Panasic.
I'd like to make another motion that administration try to set up a meeting between Alberta Health Services and our doctors, the High Prairie Medical Clinic and Town Council to discuss these issues.
Good idea. Councillor Gilroy?
The clarification on AHS, would that be referring to Dr. Worry and Dr. Ibach, since they're the ones who make the requests, or just, because we don't want to end up with, you know, the local person who's just over top who won't make the decisions.
Yeah,
I'm
those
just
are the
thinking.
ones.
And they do want to come and explain their side, by the way.
Yeah.
All those in favor? Carried. Are we going to go back to finance? Okay.
Should we take a break?
Let's take a 10-minute break.